Recovered Guild Expedition Report. Status: unresolved. Begin record.
Every hunter knows the sound, not the roar, not the growl, that soft, leather-like whoosh, the sound that tells you a Nargacuga has already moved. But in one forgotten jungle, hunters began reporting something impossible. They saw the beast standing only a few yards away, its crimson eyes never blinking, its body perfectly still within the darkness. And while every weapon was pointed at that shadow, someone else disappeared. No scream, no struggle, no warning cry cut short. Only another leather-like whoosh coming from somewhere completely different. At first, the survivors blamed speed. Then they blamed the dark. Then they blamed themselves. Because none of them could explain how a monster they were all watching could kill from somewhere no one was looking. Among experienced hunters, Nargacuga is feared for one simple reason. You rarely see the attack that kills you. It does not lumber into view like a brute wyvern. It does not announce every movement with shaking ground and snapping trees. It melts into darkness, circles unseen, and strikes with frightening precision before fading away once again. Most hunters learn to survive Nargacuga by reading the small things. The twitch of its tail, the shift of its shoulders, the angle of its glowing eyes before it springs. A good hunter does not simply watch the monster. They watch what the monster is about to become. But scattered reports recovered from abandoned jungle expeditions speak of something worse. A creature now referred to only as the Penumbral Nargacuga. No official guild record fully acknowledges its existence. Most witnesses never returned. Those who did could never agree on what they had seen. Only on what they had heard. That soft, leather-like rush of air, like wings folding open in the dark, like hide dragged across wet leaves, like something moving too close, too fast, and already gone. The survivors agreed on one more thing. The monster was never where anyone believed it to be. Tonight, we descend into that jungle. The jungle changes after sunset. By day, it is dangerous but understandable. Green canopy, heavy roots, moss-choked stone, tracks pressed into mud, claw marks along bark, the kind of place where a careful hunter can still trust their eyes. But at night, the jungle becomes something else. Every vine resembles a tail. Every hanging root resembles folded wings. And every sound arrives from the wrong direction. The first confirmed expedition entered before dusk. 4 hunters, 1 handler, 1 scout. A routine investigation into missing gatherers near the old southern marsh path. Nothing about the assignment suggested disaster. The tracks were clear. The claw marks were fresh. The pattern was unmistakable. A large Nargacuga had claimed the area. That alone was dangerous, but not unusual. The hunters knew what they were chasing. They had hunted Nargacuga before. They had brought flash pods, pitfall traps, sonic bombs, and enough lantern oil to keep the camp bright until morning. They believed preparation could turn darkness into advantage. By the time they found the first abandoned pack, the sun had already dropped behind the canopy. The pack hung from a broken branch, torn open but not eaten from. Its contents were scattered across the mud. Dried rations, a cracked whetstone, a small carving of a palico, half buried in wet leaves. No body, no blood, no signs of a struggle. The scout said that was wrong. Nargacuga killed quickly, but it did not make people vanish. Something should have remained. A drag mark, a torn sleeve, a weapon dropped in panic. Anything. Then the jungle went quiet. Not silent. Quiet. The first pair of eyes appeared between two strangler figs. Red, low, motionless. The hunters froze in formation. The heavy bow gunner raised his barrel. The longsword hunter lowered his stance. The scout whispered that it was closer than expected. No one answered. The shape behind the eyes slowly became visible. A black silhouette, long body, low posture, folded wings, tail curled along the ground. It looked exactly like a Nargacuga waiting to spring. Too exactly. For nearly a full minute, nobody moved. The monster did not blink, did not breathe, did not shift its weight. It only watched them from the trees. Then came the sound. Whoosh, soft, leather-like. Behind them, every hunter turned, then stopped. The handler asked where Jory was. No one answered. They turned back to the red eyes. The Nargacuga was gone. So was Jory. The bowgunner had been standing less than 4 steps from him. The scout had heard him breathing moments before. The longsword hunter swore Jory had muttered something about the monster not moving. Then nothing. No scream. No dropped weapon. No boot prints leaving the formation. Only empty mud where a man had been standing. The survivors searched until dawn. They found his lantern lying upright beside a root, still burning, undamaged, as though it had been gently placed there, but Jory was never found. The official report called it a failed hunt, a high-speed ambush. A known Nargacuga behavior exaggerated by darkness, panic, and limited visibility. The guild accepted the explanation. Hunters did not, because every surviving member of that party insisted on one detail. They had all been watching the monster, all of them, and the monster had never moved. Weeks later, a second party disappeared along the same jungle route. This time, only one hunter returned. She was found walking in the rain before sunrise, without her weapon, without her pack, and without any memory of leaving camp. When questioned, she spoke of eyes. Not one pair. 3. One crouched near the water. One perched halfway up a tree. One standing directly in the path ahead. Her party believed they had encountered a mated pair, perhaps even a small pack. Impossible, but fear makes impossible things easier to accept than ignorance. They formed a defensive circle. They kept lanterns high. They agreed not to move until one of the monsters committed to an attack. None of them did. The shadows only stared. Then the whoosh came from above. The first hunter vanished. Then another sound came from the left. The second hunter vanished. Then a third from behind. The survivor remembered turning in circles, lantern shaking in her hand, watching those 3 red-eyed figures remain perfectly still, not attacking, not retreating, just watching her lose everyone. When she finally ran, she looked back. The 3 Nargacugas were gone. The jungle behind her was empty, and somewhere far above the canopy, something moved with a soft leather rush. By the 4th incident, the guild could no longer dismiss the pattern. Parties were not being slaughtered. They were being reduced, one hunter at a time. Removed from camp while others looked directly at the supposed threat. The attacks were precise, silent, and almost always unwitnessed. Survivors began describing the same impossible detail. The visible monster never attacked. It never crossed distance. It never left tracks. And when hunters looked away, then looked back, the shadow was gone. That was when one field scholar proposed the first theory. The creature they were seeing was not the creature hunting them. The penumbral Nargacuga had learned to manipulate darkness itself. Shadows given convincing form. Perfect silhouettes with burning crimson eyes. They occupied attention, nothing more. They never needed to strike. They never needed to move. They only needed to be seen, because a hunter who sees red eyes in the dark will look at them. A hunter who thinks death is crouched in front of them will face it. A hunter who hears movement elsewhere will hesitate, because looking away from Nargacuga feels like suicide. And that hesitation is where the real monster lives. The real penumbral Nargacuga circled unseen. The next expeditions changed their tactics. They carried more light. They tied themselves together with rope. They thought discipline would save them. The jungle punished that confidence. On the 5th expedition, 6 hunters built a raised camp between 2 enormous trees. Lanterns hung in a circle. Wire traps covered the lower roots. Bright fire, sharp steel. Hunters speaking in low voices to remind themselves they were not afraid. Beyond the shrinking ring of light, red eyes opened. One pair, then another, 7 pairs in total. No one moved, because no one knew which one was real. The leader ordered them to watch the ground. Real monsters leave tracks. Real monsters bend grass. Real monsters breathe. So the hunters stared not at the eyes, but at the jungle beneath them. That was when the whoosh passed overhead. One hunter looked up. That was enough. The others heard his boots scrape once against the platform. Then nothing. His rope went slack. When they pulled it back, the end had been cut cleanly. The red eyes faded one by one. The camp returned to darkness. The hunter was gone. After that, the survivors stopped saying the Penumbral Nargacuga was fast. Speed was too simple a word. Speed could be tracked. This was something else. One scholar compared its hunting style to a trap. But traps wait for prey to step in the wrong place. The Penumbral Nargacuga made the wrong place wherever your attention settled. The final expedition was assembled from hunters who had studied every surviving report. They knew the rules. Do not trust stillness. Do not chase red eyes. Do not break formation. Do not turn all at once. Most importantly, never assume the visible Nargacuga is the real one. They entered during the afternoon and reached the central ruins before dusk. Surrounded by trees tall enough to make every hunter uneasy. They placed lanterns at uneven heights, low on the steps, high on poles, one inside a hanging cage that turned slowly in the humid air. They dusted the ground with pale powder to reveal footprints. They stretched thin bells along the outer vines. They even set mirrors facing the canopy, so no one had to turn completely around to watch behind them. For the first time, it seemed like hunters had brought answers. Night fell. The jungle waited. For almost an hour, nothing happened. No eyes, no growl, no whoosh. Then the first bell rang. Once, very softly, a single silver note from the eastern vines. Everyone held position. No one turned fully. The mirror caught movement, a black shape between two trees, red eyes, motionless. The leader whispered, "Shadow." No one attacked. No one looked directly at it for more than a breath. Then another pair of eyes opened to the west. Then one above the broken arch. Then one behind them, reflected in the hanging mirror. 4 Nargacugas surrounded the ruins. All still. All watching. The hunters did not panic. They called positions. East shadow. West shadow. Arch shadow. Rear shadow. Their voices stayed calm. Their weapons stayed ready. Then came the sound. Whoosh. Not loud. Not close. Just enough. High above. They had heard the real monster. They had not fallen for it. Then the whoosh came again, from below. Impossible. One hunter looked down. Only for a moment. The rear shadow vanished. The mirror went black. Something struck from the trees. A tail moved through the dark like a curved blade. The hunter beside the mirror disappeared so quickly that the lantern beside him did not even sway until after he was gone. No scream, just absence. The formation tightened. Nobody spoke his name. Speaking it would make the empty space real. The leader ordered them to keep watching separate zones. No turning together. No chasing. No grief. Not yet. The red eyes returned. This time there were more. The jungle around the ruins filled with crimson points, each pair attached to the suggestion of a body. The hunters began to understand. The creature did not need them to believe all the shadows were real. It only needed them to wonder which one was not. Another whoosh. Close. Behind the leader. The hammer hunter shouted not to turn. The leader obeyed. He stared forward at the eastern shadow, jaw clenched, refusing instinct. Something breathed behind him. The hammer hunter saw the leader's cloak lift in the air, as if something had passed inches from his back. But when he raised his weapon, the eastern shadow lunged. Not truly, it only seemed to. A sudden blur of darkness, a false attack. The hammer hunter flinched. His eyes left the leader for less than a second. That was enough. The leader vanished. His cloak fell empty onto the stone. Now the formation broke. It broke in small human ways. One hunter stepped backward without realizing. Another whispered a prayer. The bow user kept saying, "It was there. It was right there." But no one knew what she meant. The shadow, the real one, the thing behind the leader. The answer no longer mattered. The Penumbral Nargacuga had taken command of the hunt. The survivors tried the last tactic. They closed their eyes. All of them. For 3 breaths, they refused sight completely. They listened instead. Rain. Insects. Leaves. Their own blood beating in their ears. Then the whoosh came. Everywhere. A circle of leather rushing through wet air. Not multiple monsters, echoes, reflections. Movements timed so perfectly that the jungle itself seemed to flap around them. One hunter opened his eyes. A red-eyed Nargacuga stood inches from his face. He screamed. Everyone turned. The real attack came from the opposite side. The tail struck through the dark. The bow user was gone. The scream ended with her name still in someone else's mouth. Only 2 hunters escaped the ruins. They ran when the final lantern fell and did not stop until sunrise burned the shadows thin. When questioned later, neither could describe the real Penumbral Nargacuga. They had seen its copies, They had heard its movement. They had felt the air shift as it passed. But the predator itself remained almost completely unknown. One survivor gave the final detail that changed how the guild classified the incident. He said there had been a moment just before they fled when he saw all the red-eyed shadows at once. Every one of them was facing the hunters. Every one of them was perfectly still. And yet, the whoosh came from behind him. That was when he understood. The real Nargacuga had not been among the shadows. It had never been among them. Not once. It had used them the way a hunter uses bait. It had stood outside the circle of fear, waiting for the prey to look inward. Predators usually depend upon speed, or strength, or stealth. The Penumbral Nargacuga mastered something far more terrifying: attention. It understood exactly where fear forced prey to look. It knew that glowing eyes in darkness become impossible to ignore. It knew that a hunter will always face the thing they believe is about to strike. And it turned that instinct into a weapon. The shadows never needed claws. They never needed teeth. They never needed weight or breath or blood. Their purpose was simpler, crueler. They convinced every victim that survival depended on watching the wrong place. That is why the disappearances felt impossible. That is why companions vanished without witnesses seeing the attack. That is why every survivor reported the same contradiction. The monster was there. The attack came from elsewhere. The shadow disappeared, and someone was gone. Perhaps that is why no complete observation of the creature exists. No witness ever truly watched the hunt. Only the distraction, only the red eyes. Only the shape the predator allowed them to see. The real Penumbral Nargacuga remained outside the story until the moment it ended someone else's. A leather-like whoosh, a tail through the dark, an empty space in the formation, and then silence. So if you ever find yourself deep within a jungle after sunset, and the insects suddenly quiet, and the air grows heavy enough to feel alive, do not trust the first pair of red eyes you see. Do not trust the second. Do not trust the third. Do not trust the shape standing perfectly still between the trees, waiting for you to raise your weapon and give it your fear. Ask yourself instead, where is the sound coming from? Where did the leaves move? Who stopped breathing beside you? Who was standing at your back a moment ago and is no longer there? Because if you hear that soft, leather-like whoosh, the hunt is already over, and the monster was never where anyone was looking.
This report remains under investigation. The Guild closed this case. The archives did not.